Hello and welcome to TechNow, the web series for ServiceNow administrators, builders, and developers on a wide variety of platform topics. I welcome you and thank you and wish you the happiest of holidays as we go into this holiday season. My name is Chuck Tomasi, Senior TPMM at ServiceNow. I've been with the company for about 9.5 years and a customer for a couple of years before that. Do lots of video production like this, webinars and learning series, spend a lot of time on the community, and generally focusing on custom applications, integrations, and the platform in general. So going to keep my intro short so we can get the maximum content out today. With that, I turn it over to Craig for his introduction.
All right, and I'm Craig Stepp. I'm a Services Program Manager for Cloud Labs at ServiceNow. And I provide all the infrastructure at a lot of the conferences you've probably been to like Knowledge, or even some of the classes that we offer here at ServiceNow. And I've had a background in orchestration and cloud and all that kind of stuff with ServiceNow. So it's been a long ride. But I'm still on. So I've been here for about 6 years and enjoying every minute of it. So I'll turn it over to Jeremy.
All right, folks. Hey, I'm Jeremy Duncan, platform architect on the solution innovation team. I've been, go ahead and click my slide here. Sorry about that. All right, 16 years experience in IT and 8 of those on the ServiceNow platform, and speaker at Knowledge, and just got a huge background in ServiceNow. Love the tool, evangelist. Just a fun fact about me, I am a police officer in the city that I live in, so just fun little volunteer exercise I get to have. So I get to code during the day and go bust bad guys and girls at night. So that's it for me. Back over to you.
All righty. Today's agenda, we're going to start out with Jeremy talking about dynamic filter options and then get into the main topic of Craig translating your instance. So if you're joining now, this is a good time to avoid asking those questions. Hey, when are we getting the translating the question part? The instance part, we usually get somebody who struggles in late and goes, hey, this isn't the topic that I thought we were going to have. Hang on. Tell your friends. It's coming real soon. So we like to stick these quick tips in here as a way to give you a little nugget of information that we see either on the community or in our day-to-day jobs that get that going. So I'll leave that for Jeremy to show you all the good stuff about dynamic filter options, get more familiar with that. You've probably seen them, but we'll get into that. And we will be doing live Q&A as they come in through the live presentation. If we don't get to your question, we apologize ahead of time. There's often a lot of questions in here and some that we need to research and come back to later. We will be answering those in the community post, and then it'll send out a notification to you with a link directly to our answer. So you'll get all of that closed loop in the end. It's not going into a black hole. We do believe in closing that loop and getting the communication back to you. Before we begin, just a quick little advertisement about Knowledge 2020. It is coming up May 3rd through 7th in Orlando, Florida. If you haven't already looked forward on your calendar, mark those dates, talk to your boss. We'd love to see you there, no matter what your role is in your organization. If you are a brand new admin who's just starting, maybe you even want to go to Knowledge. Who's flipping my slides? Maybe you just want to go to Knowledge to get some training in. We've got training courses that we deliver at Knowledge about that. So definitely look that up. If you talk to your CIO, there's information there for execs. There's information for architects. We've got information for hands-on labs for people who have never built a ServiceNow application in their lives. We've got new content coming all the time. It's like an amusement park. We want you to come back because there's new rides all the time. Networking and customer session workshops. Most of the sessions that are led by customers telling their stories about what they've done and how they've overcome challenges and that kind of great thing. Did I hear a comment? Somebody wanted to add some commentary on that?
No, I was just enjoying your comment about there's new rides all the time.
You got to keep them coming back. Also invite you to go to servicenow.com/success to see our customer success center wherever you are on your ServiceNow journey, whether you're just getting started wondering about the implementation of a CMDB or you've been doing this for years and years like I have. there is something there for you. Best practices and guides and advocacy. It just, every time I look, there's something new there. Again, talking about that new and fresh content. Go to the Customer Success Center. If you haven't looked in the last few months, go take another look. I'm sure you'll find something there that it's like a bit like rereading Lord of the Rings. Like, I don't remember that the last time around. So I know I got to throw in the nerd references, right?
Yeah, no, bring it. Yep.
Developer.servicenow.com. Just want to remind you, if you haven't been there, free personal developer instance, online learning plans, blogs, share content, the contributions that other people have made. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Videos, the API documentation, you'll find it all there. Again, whatever your experience, if you have been doing this for years and years, or you're just getting started, there is content there, and we've got a roadmap well into 2020 for new stuff and redesign and lots of great things that we want to share with you all around the developer space. So check it out. All right, I'm turning it over to you, Jeremy. This is your bailiwick. What have you got for us?
All right, Chuck, while the screen share starts up, just to give a shameless plug to my group, the Innovation Group. As you're checking out websites, just like our Customer Success Center, check out snexperiences.com. We've got a library of useful widgets. We've got great examples out there of ways to use the platform. So as you talk to your C-level, as you talk to evangelize internally in your organization, check that site out and have some fuel in that conversation. All right, so moving right along, looks like my screen here. Yeah, thanks. All right, so it looks like everybody can see my screen now. So today we're going to talk about dynamic filters. So everyone's had plenty of experience working in the UI.
Jeremy, can you do me a favor and just make that font a little larger? These old eyes are straining to see even what table I'm looking at.
Yeah, you got it. How is that?
Nice.
Better? Awesome.
You bet.
All right, so thanks, Chuck. So we are in the incident list, so everybody's had experience working in UI 16. So here we're looking at the incident table. Right now we're looking at all records. And just to kind of set up the conversation about dynamic list filters, we talked in the past about quickly navigating a list. So today we want to talk about how we can dynamically do that using script. So that dynamic filter, just the definition of that is using that script or JavaScript to quickly navigate down into your list value. So we're going to set one up, one that's probably commonly used. So we're going to look at the assignment group, and then we've got is, but we want to say is dynamic this time, right? Because we could specifically state what the assignment group is as we filter through, but maybe we want to dynamically see, hey, any assignment group, tickets that are in an assignment group that is one of my groups. So we're going to go ahead and run that. And as we can see, we've got 18 tickets. And as you can see here in your breadcrumb, you've got your assignment group is SN Superheroes, which is a group that I'm in, software and hardware. All right, so I'm going to talk about how we got there. So those filters are not just, ServiceNow only provided. You actually have the ability to do that. So if you, over in your left-hand filter navigator, I'm going to stop cheating using my favorites, and type in dynamic. You'll see dynamic filter options in your system definition area. And so what I've pulled up here is one of my groups. This is one that we're using today, the one that I've used in my example. So if you actually click on one of my groups, you'll see the script that's being used. So what this is doing is calling, it can call script includes, it can call any script that you've got running on the server side to demonstrate that list for you, right? So we've got the option available for filter. I won't get into actually creating this, but I will show you the script include, an example of the script include that we're using today called group membership and the function get my group members. So there are lots of documented articles out there. Just a plug for docs, docs.servicenow.com. You can type in dynamic filter and you'll see a myriad of options for creating those. And that's it for my quick tip, and moving it back over to Craig for translating.
A footnote on that. Before, I remember the days before we had dynamic filters, and you'd have to put in that like assigned to is, and then you put JavaScript :gs.get user ID. Can't tell you how many times I typed that. It is so nice to have that is dynamic. And while that JavaScript thing still works, it's not friendly to people who are new to the platform, who just want to use these, not necessarily even make them, but just use them. Is dynamic is such a powerful way to do that. And then if you've got the wherewithal to know what's behind the platform, go, oh, I've got a special filter I want to make that's dynamic based upon the user that's logged in, or list that we're on, or something of that nature. You can do that, and you can apply that, like you showed, to those checkboxes, to a reference qualifier, to a list filter, to a number of places, and use them in specialized use cases. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Yeah, that was
Yes, sir.
fantastic.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's start talking about translating your instance. And, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm from the South, and I have trouble with English to begin with, as Chuck liked to remind me. So today might be a little challenge for me, but that's okay. We'll make our way through it. So translating your instance, there's lots of reasons why you'd want to do that. And the big purpose, as you can see here, there's all kinds of different reasons. Maybe your company made some acquisitions. Maybe there's some mergers, career path changes. There's lots of different reasons. Maybe you just open a new office in another country. And not everybody, of course, speaks the same language, but on ServiceNow, we can kind of level that set a little bit so everybody can kind of work in the same platform and still understand what's going on easily enough without having to do all that translation in your head trying to figure out what is the Spanish word for this or that. So that's some of the reasons why you would want to translate your instance, is to make it easier for everybody to be able to operate in it in one instance. So how do we do that? How do we enable, translation? Well, first, it's just a plugin. So you can install the plugin. If it's a free plugin, and you just go to the plugins page and you search for I-18N, or I think it's just internationalization you can search for, and you'll find it. And there's the ID on the slide there. And that ID will get you there. It'll enable it, and then you have to enable the language-specific plugins. So in today's demo, I will show you I had already enabled the Spanish plugin. So I to actually cut down on some time, because you don't want to watch that install. But so you'll want to install the international plugin and whatever languages you need. And,
just a footnote, Craig, that if you just want to do one language, you can do this in one step and say, activate the Spanish plugin, for example. It will say it depends on that main one. That's sort of the underlying dependency. Once you've activated that, then the rest are just incremental on top of that. So you don't have to do this in two steps. You could do it in one.
Yeah. Thank you, Chuck. You stole my thunder. That's the next thing I was going to say.
Oh, well. We didn't
That's okay. That's okay. Actually, that's actually good advice for if you're enabling plugins in ServiceNow altogether. If there's dependencies, you can always get that child one, and it'll get the parent one. So anyway, like I said, today I did Spanish because I know a few Spanish words, and I can at least make it look like I know what I'm doing. So what does a plugin actually translate? Of course, there are knowns and unknowns, and for the known stuff that is in ServiceNow, they're easy enough to translate because we know buttons, menu options, any of the out-of-the-box stuff that you have that you see in ServiceNow, a lot of the forms, labels, there's user messages, all that kind of stuff, even choice lists, have options already in there. That's what that plugin loads up. It loads up a lot of stuff, dates, I think months, things of that nature that are easily predictable. Those things are in there and get you going. Of course, there's some tables that go along with this too, and those tables will help. It populates those tables with information about the languages that we enabled, so we can make modifications if we need to, or add to them, which is kind of what we're going to do today. So what does it not translate? And well, this kind of leads into what I was saying a moment ago, is the knowns and unknowns. The unknowns, there's no way to know all the custom fields that you have put in your applications, or error messages, custom code, any of that stuff, any of the user entered data. A lot of those things you can't just automatically translate, if you tried, you could be introducing a lot of chaos into your system, and you don't want that. It also doesn't do outbound emails, but you can customize that on your own to make that work. But anyway, those are the things that it doesn't translate, and rightfully so, because you don't, like I said, you don't want to introduce all that chaos in your system. So you do have some control over the system localization. You can go to the system localization page, and this is a properties page that has the initial language that you want to be enabled by default. It adds translation prefixes to the translation tables, and you can make a lot of those changes. You can set the spell checker that the system will use also. And something I'm not going to touch on really in the demo or anything today, but you can set currency settings in that properties page. I just thought that was worth mentioning because, quite frankly, we're talking about localization, and not everybody uses the same money types. So go check that out, and you can go see all the settings in the system localization. So the reason we want to do this, another reason, is we want to kind of future-proof our code, or at least one of the things we're going to attempt here, rather, is future-proof our code. And to do that, in your code, whenever you say add info message or add an error message, you don't want to just hard code the message in your code, and that's convenient enough. But what if we want to make that where other people can get different translations for that? Well, that's where the gs.getMessage comes in, and we can go to the sysui message table, and I'll show you that in a moment, where you can add your own translations and make them available. Now, I know it's very convenient to be able to throw some code out there and say, oh, add info message, so-and-so is required, but not everybody's going to understand that. And to make your system more user-friendly, you want to use that gs.getMessage, which is actually really, really convenient. And it makes it simple for you to go back if you need to change what that error message says. You can always go in and change it in one place, and you don't have to go edit your code and all that. Anyway, so you can also future-proof your email scripts. And you can kind of see, at least I'm getting an eye chart a little bit, but down at the bottom in the code, you can see where we're calling the gs.getMessage in an email script. So we can get very complicated with emails and all that stuff about who it's going to translate. So I'm not actually touching on that specifically today, but you can include that gs.getMessage in there, and message that goes specifically to somebody, it will pick up on their translation or their language that they've chosen and send the right message. And if you'll notice there, it says my ugly widget label name. I'm going to touch on that in a minute, so keep that in mind. This is one of the tips I got from Chuck about using GS. See, I'm having trouble with English already. The gs.getMessage, and we'll and like I said, that'll come into play in a moment. So let's take a demo, and I'm going to show you a sales contact lead table I made. Let's see, share screen. Let me set up shop here. And if you guys will tell me when you can see that screen. Make sure I'm set to English.
Got it. Your
All
demo slide.
You still seeing the demo slide?
Oh, I might be on the. Is that my attendee view? Got it. Yeah, your screen share is fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So here we go. Here's my new, my super awesome app. It's our sales contact leads. So I'm going to go in and make a record. So I'll put myself in, Craig Stepp, work at ServiceNow. Contact type, I'll say manager. No, I'm the owner. How about that? I'll be the owner for today. So 888-222-1111. And put an email address in, Craig.Stepp at, we'll say localhost. All right, and submit. So there's our table. Now, there's nothing really fancy on here just yet, but what we're going to do is we're going to start updating our field names. We're going to translate this into Spanish. So here we go. I'm actually going to do these first three. So when you go to translate the field names, you want to do this in the configure label. So if you go into configure label, you can see there's my table, and Chuck will be happy. I'm doing a scoped out. There's the label name, there's the plural name and the first name. And of course, we see English right here. So I'm going to change this first one to nombre de pila, excuse me. And
so much for your Spanish.
Yes, that's right. So here is something important right here is the language. You want to make sure this is the right language for this label. So ES is going to be the language code for Spanish, and we will insert this. Yes?
Now, how did you know ES?
I just thought about that. I messed up. I meant to show this first. So if you go to sys_language, I was hoping you weren't going to say anything because I was going to stop by.
Can't let that
anyway,
go.
if you go to sys, there's some tables that we need to take. I didn't detail my notes enough. Anyway, so the view, there's several tables that have to do with translation. And the first one is sys language. This shows you all the languages that are in the system, but not necessarily active. And if you look down here, you'll see Spanish. There is ES. There's the language code. Everybody has a two-digit or two-letter language code, and you can see it's enabled. If you were doing your own language, you can do like Hebrew is right to left. You can change it right to left. You can change the code. You can add a code. I wouldn't recommend changing the code. I mean, like if you're making a new language. So they were doing Spanish. There's the ES code. It's left to right, and it's active.
It's kind of fun doing looking at a right to left interface because it flips the navigation around too. It's almost like looking at it in a mirror.
I did not try that. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah. That would be weird. Weird for me, not for everybody else. Yeah. So anyway, I'll go through the other tables real quick. There's this translated, and this will have the translated table. It stores translated values for field types. So if you have a translated text field, you can have some values in here, and it would change out the value based on, like, if you had December and you wanted the Spanish version for December, you can put that in here. But a lot of those are already in here. The sysui message is what we spoke about earlier with the uglykey, using the gs.getMessage. This is where you would put those messages that you want to show the user and call it and reference it from your code. So under sysui message, then there's sys_UI documentation, and it stores names along with singular and plural names, which we've seen those. If you do, if you look at any of the tables, you'll see right here. Anyway, it shows you what application. There's the language and the element, and so on and so forth. Sys choices. You've probably seen sys choice by using it with any of your forms before. Here you'll see now we have the language selection. So we will be putting in more choice options in here for the Spanish translation in just a minute. But everybody should be familiar with the sys choice. Probably used it, like you said, or like I said, in other applications or forms that you built. And the sys translated text is where it stores the fields and the field type, the translated text that actually happens in the system. And you'll see there's a lot of records in here. There's 17,000 of them in here. And a lot of these were enabled when we enabled the plugin.
All right. I hope I'm not leading you off script, but how do you know what pieces and parts of the platform are in which tables?
I'm sorry, say that again. How do I know what?
If I wanted to, say, update the text, I'm looking at something on a form and I say, I want to update that. It's not being translated. Where do I go? I've got like 4 or 5 tables that I could possibly find this text in.
Yeah,
I know what goes where.
Yeah, you're talking about the debugging. You want to do the
little prefix property.
Yeah. So if you go to I18N or just type I18, you'll see there's an enable and disable. So we're going to enable it, and I'll show you on the form. I was going to show that in a little bit, but that's okay. And you'll see when we go to this form, and you can start to see the codes right here. So there's global, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but anyway, you'll see where it says global. And if we leave this on and we translate this one field, you would see a value in here as well as displayed, explaining that this is going to be this is a translated field. You'll see translated. I'll show you in a minute when we get there. But yeah, I was going to show this after I made some modifications to my form. But anyway, you can see it starts showing you where everything's at, and this is just...
Yeah, I'll admit they aren't the best prefixes, but once you understand what those 4 or 5 mean, one says, hey, this is in sys choice. The other is, hey, this is in sys translated. You kind of get your way around, and you'll learn them really fast.
That's right. Let me modify the form, and then I'll turn that back on again. So let's disable that. Go back to my contact lead. All right, so now we're going to change the field type on the company field. All right, so this is where we want to change. Actually, I'm going to change these 3 titles here. So let's start with. Did I already translate the?
I think you did first name.
Did I do first name already? All right, so let's do configure label. I'm going to do last name. And I will put in political.
It's easy to find out when you test.
Yeah.
When you switch languages, if it's not translated, you forgot it.
That's right. By the way, if you do update this through right-clicking on it and changing the label information, don't forget to insert.
Insert and stay. If you hit
insert or enter and stay.
Your English one is now gone.
That's right. So company is Sperza. We'll change that to S. We'll do insert. Okay.
Hopefully
now I've changed.
Hopefully there's nobody with better Spanish that's chuckling to themselves right now.
Hey, I took 3 years of Spanish in high school. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go change over to Spanish. And by the way, this is a easy way for you to change your language, and it does stick, unlike the time zone. We'll talk about that later. But anyway, this is where you go and you can change your language. It'll refresh the page behind it automatically. And there we go. You can see that my field name's changed. And I hope somebody can read that because I cannot. Just kidding. I can read it. And we'll switch back to English. All right. So now what I want to do is I'm going to update this choice list. All right. So this choice list has manager, line worker, and owner. Okay. Those may not make a lot of sense to a lot of people. So what we're going to do is we're going to add Spanish words in here for the contact types. So let's go into sys choice.
You can also do this. You don't have to directly go to sys choice either. You could do this through the dictionary.
You can. Let's do that.
There's so many different ways you can work with choices.
There is. Well, the reason I wanted to do it as sys choice because I wanted to also explain you can export this and import, in bulk. Like if you have your application in here, like if I've only got one application in this instance, so you can see I have TechNow 70. There's an application. There's all the field types. You could export this, have somebody translate it, and you can pop it back in. Import it back in, and then it would be there. So you can export all your stuff at one big swath, and then send it someone to change it. And unfortunately, I forgot to remove my items, so I'd already put them in. You can see that manager is gerentry. I don't know. Help me out, Chuck. Then we have line worker, and then of course owner is the propertia. Yeah. So anyway, so you can see them in there. When I go back to my contacts list and I change over to Spanish again, the page refreshes and I pull up my form and you can see I have the different options. Now, what's important with the choice list is that we change just the display name and not the value because we want manager to be the same in the background, but we want the display value to be different, right?
Right.
And I'll go back and you can see.
Very important.
There's valar is value in Spanish, just letting you know. I'll refresh
If you do decide to go with the export route, have somebody translate it and import it, make sure you coalesce on the right fields. You need the table, the element, and the value.
Value. I would say you have
the 3 coalesces to make that match.
Yeah, but otherwise you will have a problem. So and definitely do this in your subprod.
Yes.
Yes. So there we go. All right. So we have those values in there. Now let's see. I'm going to add a new record. Let's say Chuck Tomasi. He works at ServiceNow still, and we will. Yeah, he's one of my managers. I'm the owner. Remember?
Oh, right,
So,
right.
All right, so we'll add a phone number, and I'm going to leave the email address out. We'll save that.
Okay.
And you can see where it says email address is required. Okay, well, it's going to show that same message whether we're in Spanish or not, and I'll show that.
Obviously, you didn't make it a mandatory field. You did that through a business rule, I'm assuming.
I did that through a business rule, but only to demonstrate
Right.
the GetMessage. So let's
Kids
go
don't
back.
do your mandatory fields that way.
Yeah. So let's do Homer. Notice I'm in Spanish. Homer Simpson. What?
So it'd be Omer.
Yeah, Omer. He works at ServiceNow too. We relaxed our hiring barriers there.
He was a safety technician or safety manager, so he's transferable.
That's right. Okay, and he's also a manager. So when I save this, see, it still says email address is required. So let's switch back over to English.
You saved it anyway, but it's more about the message than the logic at this point.
That's right. It is. So I'll delete you two guys. Delete. All right. So now I know like I said, there's a business rule in here, and there's other ways to deliver that message. But here we go. I'm going to go configure business rules, and I have test. Actually, I should have made that email check. Do that. All right. So it's going to check when the email address is empty. This is a before record. And you can see right here, it just says gs.add error message, email address is required. So let's change this out. What's that?
That's brutal.
It is brutal. So I'm going to change this out.
You don't want to do this, kids, because somebody's going to come along later and say, oh, we just opened a store in Guadalajara and we need all this working. And you don't want to have to come back to code.
No, not necessarily. And maybe somebody else needs to update these messages and they're not necessarily a coder. So you don't want somebody monkeying around in your code looking for an error message or something. So here I just changed the message, and you can see we're using gs.add error message, gs.getMessage, and here we're going to use our
ugly
key. Yeah, we're going to use an ugly key.
As you go through some of the out-of-box examples, you will see it says in English, email address is required. That's what it will use if it doesn't find a key in the SysUI message table, which is fine. That's a great default value. Show them what happens if you use the ugly key, Craig.
All right. So we're going to update that. Let's go back to our form. I'll make a new record. Oh, Homer is back again. Simpson. Oh, ServiceNow. I'm too quick to type in test.
I love this trick.
All right. So we'll submit it. And you'll see there's the ugly key. And I did a little camel case and some underscores, so it's easy to stand out. It stands out that says, hey, this doesn't look right, right?
This has not been translated. So why would you care that it hasn't been translated?
Why would I care it hasn't been translated?
Right.
Because I want to make sure that it is translated. That's why I care.
Right. Why wouldn't you just want to go with English up there?
Again, if we have we're an international company, and we have international people, and everybody doesn't speak the same language. So it'd be easier for somebody English is not their first language to be able to read it.
Okay. So it would really, what we're getting at is, if you said, I'm going to export my, in this case, the SysUI message table, find me all the messages related to this application. If there's nothing in there, there's nothing to translate to Spanish. So you won't get the Spanish, even after a translation service goes and does what they normally do.
Oh, I see
If
what
you
you're
have other key, it jumps up right in development and goes, whoa, I at least need an English key in here. So it says something reasonable. So go do that part, and then you'll have an entry. I mean, I want to catch this in development as soon as possible to say, we have a gap here. Rather than going in saying, here's my exported table, go translate these 1,500 entries. And it goes, well, 300 of we've been doing UAT, and 300 of your messages are still in English only because you cheated, and GetMessage had English messages as the keys. That's the important thing to realize is GetMessage, you're passing a key. And if there's no key in that table, it will use the key as the message.
Right.
Which I think is kind of I understand why developers do it because it's fast, but now you won't have anything in the translation table to go and translate.
That's right. Well, that's what I was saying a moment ago, is that kind of sticks out when you have the underscores and whatnot. So a key for you, or a clue, I should say, for you to go add something in there. So let's go add one. All right, sys UI message. And we're going to add a new, and we're going to give it the key, which would be the contact email is required. And you can leave the application blank. You don't necessarily need that, but you can put it in there. So the messages, email.
Field. The second one is obviously your scoped app.
Yeah, it could be your scoped app. I think you don't necessarily have to put anything in there. I think you can leave it empty.
No, you don't.
Email address. Actually, let's put an email address is required.
Nice.
All right. So I'll save that. Now let's make a Spanish one, right? Spanish.
Ooh.
And there you go. How about that? And I want to
you're
be
fast.
sure to. What's that?
You're fast.
I know. I type really quick. So I'm going to insert this. So we have two keys. So you can see right here, we show matching. We got a Spanish one and the English one, and email address is required. And then there's the Spanish translation for that, which I will not try and butcher.
Different message. A lot like choices where you have the same value and different labels. Same concept here.
Yeah. So let's go to contact lead. Let's add Chuck in here again.
You want to do this in Spanish? I want to see what
I'm going to do it in English, and I'm going to add another one in a second. So you've been demoted to a lawn worker.
Do you need all those other fields, Craig, or are you just...
No, not really. I'm used to talk. I'm feeling it. I don't know why I'm doing that.
Had to wonder.
Just do it. Anyway, there we go. We're getting the English translation now that we just saw a moment ago. And let's change that to Spanish.
Go ahead, Roberto Rodriguez or somebody.
Let's see, a good Spanish name. Jeremy Duncan. There we go. We'll say ServiceNow. I won't fill it all in. So now we're in Spanish, of course, and I hit submit. And you can see there it clearly says an email address is required.
Easily done. And if you get another language, you just go enter another entry in that table.
Yes. Yeah.
Or if you're doing it en masse, say, hey, we've been using this application for 2 years. We added a new company in Germany, all the German translations. You have a way of going and finding all of those keys for this application and saying, great, go translate all of these to German. I'll import them. That's standard import set stuff we've talked about in the past. On your way. Good stuff.
Actually, I thought about something earlier today, and I meant to actually change my code to reflect that. The ugly key, you may want to actually, if it's for an application, specific application that you wrote, maybe you should reference that application in the ugly key.
Put the scope name in it. That never hurts.
Yeah, so that way you can easily search and filter your choice list and find that. So there's that, and so let's turn the debugging back on that we spoke about earlier. Let's go change to English so I can read what's going on.
You're probably not good English.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been running through this enough. I probably could read it. Let's see. So now we want the I-18N. We're going to enable that. We enabled it. So let's go back to our table, and you can start to see where this is the choice list. let's go in here, and you can see where some of the
different elements from.
Yeah, the codes where it's at. So you can see this is choice list, and there's I didn't change anything else, but there you get the idea. All right. So the last thing I want to talk about, I just want to touch on it, but and we did already earlier. It was exporting and importing the stuff, with a spreadsheet. And as Chuck said earlier, be very, very careful when you do this. But you can do it easily enough to make this a quicker process to get these things translated. Which you would dump it out of the spreadsheet. You can send it off, pass it off to somebody. All the English ones, I could do all the English stuff and then just change the code. And when you import it in, make sure that you do the coalescing right. And there are some mapping already in the system to help do that. So you can, when you import these translations in to make it right. So there you go. And that's about all I had. Do we have any questions or anything?
There's questions about translations for plugins that don't exist yet. Is there a roadmap? There's nothing published that I know about, but it is, if you've got an idea for a language, certainly go to the idea portal on the community and submit it. People can upvote it and say, hey, I think Vietnamese is a great language to add to the standard plugins. Otherwise, you would have to do the translation yourself, which is sad but true. There was another one about what was I looking at? I got a question for you, Craig.
Okay.
Do you know how to identify what hasn't been translated yet? Aside from those labels and roaming around the interface going, is this translated, is this translated, is this translated?
Yes.
Yes?
I'm trying to remember.
Modules? Do you know about the inactive modules?
I would say for what, like if I did not translate one of my fields, like on my table out here?
Go to the filter navigator. I get to show Craig something.
Okay, show me something.
Go to the filter navigator, type in translated.
Oh, right.
And underneath system localization, edit that menu, the bottom application menu, system localization. Click the pencil. The bottom,
okay. Yep.
The bottom application menu. Click that. And go down to the modules.
Mm-hmm.
Note there are a whole bunch of them that say active, false, active, false, active, false.
Yep.
It is intentional. If you use those, you can send out, I forget if it's a scheduled job or if it just happens while you're roaming around. It starts to create entries in these tables of saying, hey, this wasn't translated either. And you get this list of tables for translated text, for translated names and fields, the messages, the 4-5 tables that you were looking at before. Mm-hmm. There are counterparts to that say, oh, this wasn't translated either. Now you can easily export that and fill in any gaps. That's what happened to me as a customer is I was adding fields and forms, and then 6 months later somebody says, we need this translated. And I went, what's not translated? So at Knowledge 10, I sat down with Kristen Mitchell. Said, still remember the very fond memories when we had like the Genius Lounge kind of thing.
Right.
And you showed those to me, and it was very, very helpful to identify where those gaps are.
Yeah, I was looking to see if ours were showing up there when I did now, but I don't see it yet.
Definitely a subprod thing. Look into those. Mm-hmm. I believe there's a docs file on this. If you look for untranslated text or something of that nature, you'll come across this document or the instructions on these inactive modules.
Okay,
so
very good.
Those in mind.
All right.
All right, got another question from Medtronic. How do you do translations for surveys and assessments?
That's a good question. That I do not know. Do you know,
I
Chuck?
would start by turning on the debugging and look at a survey and assessment and go, does it say GMLD or does it say MSG? Where is that information coming from? We get a lot of questions like this in the community about, hey, how do I change what this button says? Okay. A lot of it is just understanding which of those 4 tables you're looking at. That's where the majority of the translation happens. Even if you just want to change the message in English, say, I don't want it to say update. I want it to say, whatever you want it to say. You can change that. But keep in mind that you may have impacts throughout the system. More than one thing may use that same key. Think of how many places you see the word new. If you said, I wanted to say create new, you could be changing every button in the system because its key says new, and you just went and changed everything that's related to that key. So be aware that your changes may have more wider impact than you first think about.
Yeah, so as we showed the debugging, and you mentioned that, and go look at those 6 tables, and see if you can find those options in there too. Otherwise, you just have to build them yourself.
All right, another question if we got time. Okay. So what was the purpose of creating the English key to replace the contact email required? You may have covered it, but just wanted to double check there.
So the main reason for replacing that key with something with underscores and make it ugly is to jump out at the developer right away. So if I said gs.getMessage, email underscore is underscore required. Okay, take that as the key that's in gs.getMessage. When I actually hit that error message or any other message in the system, it's going to stand out at me with like underscores. That sucker needs translating right now. I'm running over to the SysUI message table and creating an entry that says email is required that associates that message to that key.
A flag. And it's really a flag for yourself.
It's a flag. It's a flag so that you can go into that table later and say, I've got all the English done. Now give me the Spanish, the Portuguese, the German, the whatever other languages you need based on those keys. If you don't, if you just said gs.message, email is required in English, it's going to look fine. The developer is going to wave nice day and move on. And they'll totally forget. Now you send your SysUI message table export out for translation. It's not going to get translated. You don't have a key for anyone to translate. So it is like.
Yeah, I'll say the other thing is sometimes there's requirements to change the message. And if you didn't change, let's say if you, I don't know, maybe to contact so-and-so, and then all of a sudden now you're contacting another department, so the message changed, you'd have to change it in your code and then go change the sys-translated UI message.
Well, not necessarily. The code doesn't have to change because it's just calling a key.
No. What I'm saying is the reason you would use the key is, that I want to create an English one is so that way there's one place for me to go change it rather than having to change it in the code and then go change my Spanish translation. If you use a key...
No, again, you don't have to change... Okay, I understand. If you didn't have an English key that went with it, it's going to use that as a default.
Yeah, okay. That's what I'm saying is that if you use a key... And the question was about adding, why did I create the English one? It's so that way I don't have an English, you can just go ahead and put it in the code. But if for some reason that message changes in the future and you have to go change it, you have to go find it in the code. And then you got to change the translation to match up. Whereas if you use an ugly key, you just put both messages in the SysUI message. And there's one place for you to go change it in, well, 2 records, but it's in one place.
Next question, thank you. Can you use ATF to test out translations?
Oh, very good question.
I do not have an answer for that.
I have to follow up on that one. I don't know the answer to that one. You stumped the chump.
I'll let you figure out which one's the chump, but
answer it.
Yeah, perfect. We'll follow up with them on that. We got time for more questions? We got a ton.
Let's do a couple more.
Yeah, sure thing. Let's see here. Does ServiceNow integrate with Google Translate in any way?
Not that I'm aware of. However, we need to go back to the slides, but I do want to say that one of the best practices, don't use Google Translate to always translate your fields. I would look for a native speaker because I've been bitten by that before. I was trying to be funny on Facebook and reply to somebody in Spanish and didn't work right.
I will say that there is a Google Translate spoke on the roadmap for Integration Hub, so look for that.
Safe harbor. All right. So speaking of a safe harbor, ask a question. So do we have plans to offer in-platform translation for case notes, chat, and virtual agent?
Not that I've heard, but I'm not an expert on either of those, so I can't say with 100% certainty. Again, we can check with the product managers and follow up with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
All right, so I'm going to go back to my slides. I did. So there we go. Here's the slide I was talking about, best practices. So don't rely on online translations like Google because it's not 100, they're not always 100%. However, they are pretty good, but they're not 100% accurate. And sometimes gender's an issue when you're trying to translate something. It could be a number of things. And watch the length of your labels. If you're changing the label names, some Italian might be a lot longer than, the word last name. It might be a little longer and it might wrap. So it may change the way your forms are laid out slightly. So you want to keep an eye on that. And of course, again, we hammer home again, using GetMessage, using the ugly keys. So that way, one, you consolidate where you have to look for those messages and you can update them as needed or add new ones. And, so make sure you use the ugly key as a flag so you can see where it's not translated and you can go add it. And of course, the added benefit is having everything in one table to be able to change. And so the takeaways, what are the takeaways here? We understand how to take a look at the tables and the system properties to make some changes to our system for translation. And again, those 6 tables, and you can find those very easily in our documentation, and there's a lot more information in there about how to use those. And of course, preparing to make your code more future-proof and translation capable using the get message and the keys and that kind of stuff. So that way, it's easy to make changes on the fly, and you can go back to drinking your coffee rather than hunting through 100 lines of code looking for a message.
It's all about, it's all about that total cost of ownership. Invest a little now, it will save you a lot later. Anytime, my mental trigger is anytime I'm putting something in quotes, whether it is a table name, a system property, a GS get message, anytime I do quotes, a little yellow flag goes off in my head that says, am I causing myself harm later? Is this maintainable? If I'm putting messages into gs.add info message or add error message or something of that nature, a little yellow flag goes off and says, I should really be using gs.getMessage to make this translatable for the future, especially an application that I want to share publicly. And sys IDs, don't do it. That's a big red flag in my opinion. Yeah. So watch for quotes. It's as simple as that. Just get your mindset around, is this quoted text? I may be causing problems later. How can I get out of this? If you don't know,
that's a good way to think of it. Yeah.
All right. Sorry to interrupt your flow of these last 3 takeaways.
Ah, man, you just you're interrupting me now. All right. So anyway, so the last takeaway, of course, is just follow best practices. As we mentioned, don't rely on online translations and really get somebody that knows the language that can translate it effectively as need be. And use those ugly keys. Ugly keys, folks.
You get a T-shirt that says that. All right. Yeah. Some reference information. We mentioned docs.servicenow.com where you can find all this wonderful information. And if you've got any other questions, you can go to the community. Hey, how do I do this? Is this a viable approach? What should I do in this case? The great place to air those opinions and get feedback from the experts who have done this before, as well as sharing that with people who are possibly looking to do this in years to come. It's persistent information, so it's wonderful. Developer.servicenow again for that free personal developer instance. You can do that over there. All the APIs, if you want to know more about gs.getMessage, and there is more to it. There's a way to pass parameters to it. I'm going to save that one for you. I've got a blog article on it on the community. So take a look at that. And, of course, all the episodes. This is number 70, which means we've been doing this for a while. If you think about we did this every month. It goes back years and years, lots of content that you can find over at that bit.ly link, ServiceNow-TechNow. And again, the Customer Success Center is a great place to go for information such as this. If we didn't get to your question again, we will post that in the community. Give us a day or two, and it will be on the TechNow 70 episode. I'll email you with a link. If you happen to ask multiple questions, they'll be in one email. We got smart about that. So thank you for joining us today. A few different ways you can get in touch with us on YouTube comments or Twitter, you name it. We even have an email address. On behalf of Jeremy and Craig and me, thank you very much for joining us today. And again, wish you the happiest of holidays, which is going to sound funny if you watch this at a not holiday time. But I guess wherever you go, there's always some holiday.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
something.
we will talk to you again real soon. Bye now.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.